Officer of the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology. We will go ahead and get started with our Education and Outreach Committee meeting. And I will take control of the meeting in the beginning here until we elect a chairperson, to which then we will turn the reins over. So if I could go ahead and ask Marcine Meliza to please call the roll.
Yes. Member Ellis?
Yes.
Member Fairley?
Yes.
Member Isbell?
Yes, here.
And Member Matos is absent. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so this is our first meeting in quite some time of this committee. This is our Education and Outreach Committee. We have a quorum, so we will go ahead and move on to the election of a committee chairperson. Members are welcome to either volunteer or nominate a fellow member.
I just have a, sorry.
No,
Unless I missed it in our, I didn't see it in the paperwork that was sent out, what the responsibilities of the chairperson was.
It's really the chairperson runs the meetings and also would communicate directly with me on any agenda items prior to each of these meetings.
Okay. I would volunteer.
All right. I don't recall. Sabina, do we need a motion for that?
Yeah, so you can nominate yourself in a motion, or someone can nominate you in a motion, and then we'll have a second, and then we'll have any discussion, go out for public comment, and then have our vote.
Do we have a second for Ms. Tanya Fairley being the chair of our?
Second. Right. Was that, Tanya, was that a motion that you to nominate yourself? Or you're just,
I'm laughing with you. No, I was, okay, I'll put the motion to volunteer myself.
I second it. I apologize. I'm dealing with a dog who has allergies, so you're going to hear a bit of coughing on my end.
All right, with a motion and a second, we will now turn to public comment.
We are now taking public comment on the election of a new chair. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests for public comment. Let's take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, please. And at this time, we will have Marcine do the roll call for the vote.
Okay. Member Ellis?
Yes.
Member Fairley?
Yes.
Member Isbell?
Yes, and thank you, Tanya.
Would be 3 yeses. Thank you.
All right, Tanya, you are now our chair of our Education and Outreach Committee. I will turn it over to you, and then you're welcome to turn it back over to me.
I just felt afterwards, I was like, what did I just do? No. It's all good. I got some good teachers out there. Chrissy, I am turning this back over to you.
Okay. So moving on to our next agenda item, which is item number 3. That's a review and discussion of the education and outreach report. So since this is the first time this committee has met in quite some time, we decided to put together a report for your review. So we went back and kind of looked at things we've done in the past, things we've done during the pandemic, about all of our outreach that the board has accomplished. So we wanted to give you this as a starting point for your discussions. Of course, this committee is charged with education and outreach, so we would welcome any of your input on how we can increase our outreach efforts, not only in the industry, but obviously for consumers as well. That being said, we will turn it back over to you, the committee members, for discussion.
I think one of the questions that I had is how is the state board invited to participate in events to get information out to the consumers in regards to what the state board's role is, and just kind of giving the consumers and in the industry more information about the board.
So we do, we get invited to things like consumer fairs, or, we've done events at the Capitol for consumers. Oftentimes, those are through legislator offices or through our Department of Consumer Affairs. We do rely on our Department of Consumer Affairs. They have a public information office there, and we have a public information officer assigned directly to our board. So we do get information from them, and that's how we would take some steps in contacting consumers directly. In my time being here as at the board, it is a difficult situation to be in. There are only certain things we can do via the budget. We had looked at some time ago doing kind of a larger campaign for a look for the license. One of the things that the board, or possibly when it was a bureau many, many years ago, so before my time, which would have been plus 16, 17 years ago, they had set up posters in kiosks in certain malls, and they were directed towards consumers. And it was a great poster that they did, and they zoomed in on certain things that you should look for. And those were placed in malls. And we wanted to do that again, but unfortunately it was very, very costly. And we weren't able to make that happen. So, we have some constraints on what we do with our spending. Different administrations over the last years that I've been here have had different priorities. So it would depend on, for example, again, before my time, the board had purchased lots of swag, in a sense, what we call it. We had little, fingernail files that we could hand out that, had a little message on them, or we had little mirrors that we could hand out that had a message on them. And many years ago, there was direction that we had to stop producing that type of merchandise. So, we have some limits on what we can do financially, but we're certainly open to any suggestions or any groups that anybody else might have of where we can reach consumers in a better way. We are pretty successful with reaching the industry. We have, COVID has been hard, even though we have been able to utilize our email blasts with COVID and information that way. Normally, there's trade shows throughout the state that we would attend. Those obviously have been on hold for COVID, but we're able to reach a lot of the industry. And so that's been pretty successful, but reaching the consumers has definitely proven to be more difficult. You can see in your packets that we've done things like our Safe Sandal season, where at times we have had many media outlets that have been very interested. I've gone on live TV. We've had some of our Spanish-speaking staff go on live TV to talk about safety during pedicures, because obviously that's one of our big concerns. So there is that, and we could, the Department of Consumer Affairs is more than happy to help us on that aspect in trying to get the media outreach out there and to do these points on the news and on when Sacramento, we have Good Morning Sacramento. And so we were able to attend that as well. So those are all options that we have as well that have been successful in the past.
Thank you for that, Christy.
If I could follow up on that. So we're talking about two different types of education outreach, one to consumers and one to the industry. As far as the one to the industry is concerned, I'm curious, in particular with the new passage of SB 803, what our outreach has looked like. I've read the report, but as far as in contacting the industry practitioners themselves versus just trade shows or schools, to what extent does our board reach out to practitioners as well?
Well, we reach out to, the only way we can reach out to individual licensees is via the email. So we, or social media. We've had a presence on our Facebook page, as well as Instagram. I can say that the Facebook has not been great. And that is because during COVID, it was very hard to be very honest. We have to have staff assigned to those duties, and unfortunately, we found that a lot of the industry thought that we were their association, and not that we were here to protect the consumer, which is why we are here. And so we had to really limit our Facebook presence for the last couple of years because it was quite stressful for staff having to weed their way through some of the comments that we were receiving. Hopefully that gets better. We've done a lot of education through our board meetings and through outreach based on COVID to try to educate our licensees of our role, that our role is consumer protection and not an advocacy for the industry, that is their associations. So hopefully that's gotten better and we can look to increase our Facebook presence more. And when it comes to email blasts, we can send out email blasts, but keep in mind that an email address is not required as part of your application process. So we are not reaching all of our licensees through an email blast. We're only reaching those who have given us the email address. So while it is a lot, because of course we do have a lot of licensees in the state, it isn't everyone. So the only other way to ensure we're reaching more is to do an actual mail out, which of course would be extremely costly for the board to do that.
But just on that note, we do mail outs for, as we were just discussing earlier, we do mail outs for specific alerts, correct? Like something to be posted in the salon or what have you. Are those types of mail outs regular, or is that like a one-time thing depending on the type of posting that we're requiring?
So that goes out with an establishment license. So we send information out with an establishment license. We send a self-inspection checklist, and then any information we send the consumer poster out. So those go anytime an establishment license is issued. So either a brand new establishment license or a renewed establishment license, get that information.
Okay, and so then those would be potential opportunities to include something else if we needed to educate on an issue?
It's definitely an opportunity. Again, we would have to look at the costs, because there's the cost for developing. If say we were going to send a flyer out, well, that's 600,000 flyers, and then it's going to have to be inserted. So there's obviously there's a cost involved with all of that, with the inserting of it to our printer and the printing of an additional piece of paper, and then does that piece of paper increase the postage? So there's obviously we have to look at all aspects of it, but it's definitely a possibility that an insert can go in with a license, and that's establishment or a renewal license in general, because we're also sending renewal licenses to individual licensees. Some of the things that we've done in the past is, instead of putting the actual, if we had multiple pages of information, we would do almost like a small insert into their licenses that might be a different color, so to kind of catch attention and refer people to the website to go look at our website to see if they can to pull up any new information on that. And then keep in mind also, when we change regulations, we do have a statute that requires us to notify all licensees if we've changed the health and safety regulations. Obviously, the health and safety is what an establishment or an individual license has to follow every day that they're working. One of the big things we've done in the past is when we've changed regulations for foot spa disinfection, what we've done is we looked at everyone who had within their scope of practice to potentially do a pedicure. So we sent those new regs out to all cosmetologists, all manicurists, and all establishments. But we didn't send them out to all barbers, because barbers shouldn't be doing pedicures. So we have things like that as well that we're required to do.
And are those materials in multiple languages, or specific to the language of a specific salon per se?
We do things in multiple languages. We don't collect any. We collect language preference by individual, but knowing what we know based on our examinations, we translate everything into Spanish, Vietnamese and Korean. That's a given that we're going to do. A couple of years ago, we decided in-house to go ahead and translate our health and safety regulations to Chinese, to both traditional and non-traditional. I'm lost for words on that. And we did Farsi, and I believe we did Arabic. So one of the things we see happening is when people ask to bring an interpreter with them to the examination, we track that information. It's not usually enough to require us to translate that information, but it is, in our opinion, enough to at least provide health and safety regulations in those additional languages. So we have those links available online. It's not something that we mailed out. I can tell you, when we did our large mail out many years ago, when we updated our foot spa disinfecting regulations, we sent those out in Spanish and in Vietnamese. We did not have Korean at that time, but those all went out in each of the languages.
Okay, thank you. I do have, I'm just jumping around here, but please forgive me if we want to continue on certain points. I do have one comment on the California Safe Salon video. At the end of the video, it has the wrong URL. It lists at the very end of the video, it lists the archives link in the subtitle versus what is spoken, which is the link to the consumer safety. So just an update on that.
Great, thank you.
So what else is our role here in this discussion now? Are we making determinations? Are we discussing future options? Are we making any motions? What is our role in this agenda item?
Well, the next agenda, for this agenda item, we wanted to just show you what we've done in the past, kind of give you an idea of everything that we've done and that what's really an option for us to do. And then the next agenda item is to discuss a discussion on future plans for outreach and education and any recommendation that this committee might have to the board. So we would welcome any recommendations for anything that you all might know of opening up the box to see what else we could do to increase our education and outreach.
Okay.
Reese, you took the question right out of my ears, mouth, and my hand. Because that would definitely, with Chrissy addressing the recommendations for future, I think too, going back to the previous and what the board has done, you made a valid point, Christy, about licensee really understanding what the role of the board is, and at times how that can be very difficult to navigate the two. However, I do feel that being on this committee will definitely, if I'm looking at it from a licensing side, that there's definitely some room to continue to educate the licensing on our role to protect the consumer, not just a one bit here, one bit there, because I think sometimes being repetitive is what sticks, right? So we could say that we know that we go to school for, protecting the consumer and teach you, process and procedures. But the reality of it is that when people become licensed, they look to the board to help protect their license. So definitely additional education on that. And that's all I had to say.
Christy, are there plans to hold webinars in the future for licensees? I know that the COVID-19 pandemic is slowing down, but are we? What are our professional development plans in a post-pandemic world?
It's definitely something we can consider. COVID really opened up that world for us. We had never done that before. I've participated in several webinars with different associations just, in the past few months. And so I think it's a definite opportunity that we have that we could increase our webinars.
Thank you.
And that's a plan we could put together for this committee and bring back to you. We could look at maybe a plan because we would want them to be targeted. We've, in the past, we did targeted towards the barbering industry, targeting towards the cosmetology industry. I think it could be really helpful if we targeted towards schools and possibly get their students on so that they're hearing who the board is and what our role is from a student perspective, and not once they've become a licensee and have been a licensee for many years and getting back involved in the board. So I think we have an opportunity there as well, and that's something we could put together a plan to bring back to this committee to look at.
I think that would be great. Thank you, Christy.
I'm not sure if the committee would be interested in this as well, but we could also put together and we could show you our packet of what we provide at each stage of mailing. I'm getting messages as we're discussing right now. Our inspectors also are our educators out there in the field. So we could also look, we could provide you at our next meeting with what exactly goes out with the establishment license, what exactly is handed out at the inspection process. And then we also provide information during the complaint process as well, or during the citation review. If we deem a citation is warranted, there's specific information that gets mailed out with that as well. So we could put that together as well for this committee to look at. And again, we would be open to suggestions. Some of us have been here for a very long time at our board. So fresh eyes is always super helpful on ideas on how we could change things around.
Thank you. That would be very helpful. It's a little amorphous talking about this as a new committee member and new to the board and not knowing exactly what we are currently doing. So thank you. That would be great.
Christy, on the things that have been done in the past, does that only involve like when you're doing the not the pop-ups, but like the webinars or going to events? Is that for our board members included in that, or committee members included in that, or is that only employees of DCA that actually participate in the outside events?
It's been mostly staff from the board working with DCA. Anytime we would involve board members, we just would have to be sure not to involve too many board members, because we can't have it become a committee meeting, for instance. But we have had board members as well come do events with us as well. So we can certainly look at that as well.
I was just wondering because it seems like that would be a good feel of bridging, the board members, especially some who don't have the industry experience, and really kind of understanding what goes into the events and the whether we're doing community outreach on the consumer side or the licensing side. So.
One of the things we've done in the past that I thought was very successful was we did some speaking engagements at the Mexican consulate down in Los Angeles, and hopefully we can reach out to them and see if they'd be interested in doing that again. So it was super well received and a way to reach individuals that we don't have direct contact with to invite them, but we've been really successful at that in the past. So that's something we can look out to. We really like to reach some of our non-English speaking communities out there. We have a lot of support from the Vietnamese community. They've had us on Facebook Live and YouTube events that they've hosted and translated, and also working directly with legislators for town halls. We've been able to reach some of those communities. The Vietnamese community has been super helpful. We haven't had as much from the Spanish-speaking community, and I think that's where we need it. So we definitely would like to look further into getting some connections in those communities to see if we can increase our presence there as well. So if the members don't have any more questions, I might recommend we open it up to public comment just to see if there's any public on that may have additional suggestions that you might want to take into consideration, if that's all right with the committee.
I agree.
Seconded.
We are now open for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will take requests for comment in the order they are received. Let's take just a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, please. So I recommend that we look to our next meeting for staff to put together the information we discussed, and we'll put together the packets that we provide currently. We'll also provide information on our future plans that we have. We will be attending the ISSE Long Beach show, which is in, I believe it's in June or July this year. It's normally a January meeting. So the trade shows are super helpful for our board. We're very, very popular at trade shows. And I think it's mostly because we usually have a table with a sign that says most items or some items that are for sale at this trade show might not be within your scope of practice or legal at all in California. And there's no restrictions on manufacturers. So it's a very it's super helpful for us to be at the trade shows because of some of the equipment that's sold and targeted to some of our licensees that never should be purchased and being placed in their salons. So we will be attending the next ISSE show. Hopefully there will be more shows coming in the future. I've been asked personally to speak at several schools via webcast. So I know next week, I believe in the evening, I'm doing a speaking engagement with a school to talk to their students. It's been a little more common with SB 803 that schools have been kind of looking for additional information from the board to be told straight to their students. And we're certainly happy to do that as much as we can. So that's also a good avenue for us to reach some of our prospective future licensees. So for our next meeting, we can certainly put all of that information together and present it to this committee to see if you have any recommendations on any of that packaging that goes out to our licensees.
Thank you so much.
Reese, if you're talking, I think you might be muted.
I'm muted. I'm sorry. I'm muted for public comment. So yes, thank you very much. I would value looking at what we currently send out. I'm also curious if we have any video of any of our outreach done by speaking or at conventions or anything like that, just or any YouTubes of that nature for any telebriefings we've done in the past. If that's something that's available, we could look at as well.
Definitely, we can get you links to that.
Thank you.
If there's no further comments on that, I think we could move to the next agenda item.
I think we covered this agenda.
Yeah.
We covered this.
I think so. We could just go to public comment to open that up to see if there's any input from the public on this item.
We're now taking public comment on agenda item 4. If you have a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all panelists. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We will call on people in the order that we have requests for public comment. Let's take just a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. First request for comment is from Jamie. Bear with us just a moment, and we'll send you a request to unmute your microphone. All right, Jamie, we see that you've unmuted. Will you do a mic check with us, please? Can we have audio text slide 31, please?
Is this working now?
We hear you. Go ahead, please.
Sorry about that. I switched AirPods. Jamie Schrabeck, Precision Nails, just a few points. The Look for the License campaign, which the DCA promotes across all different agencies, of course, ours being rather large, doesn't do as much good when our licensees can have their government issued license in one name and yet they'll advertise with a completely different name. That is even true for establishment licenses. So I wish, again, through statute, there was some requirement that our licensees would have to use their government name somehow and their license number so that when consumers do the right thing by verifying a license before going to an establishment or frequenting a particular individual licensee, that they'd be able to find them in the Breeze system. It seems really frustrating that we've invested all this time and money in Breeze and that isn't functional in that way. Another thing that I think needs to be brought to the attention of both consumers and licensees is the fact that the Gender Tax Repeal Act of 1995 prohibits gender-based pricing discrimination, and yet that is so common in our industry. And I don't know why that is and how people don't understand that it's not fair to charge different prices for the same product or whatever. But that still happens, I think, is an opportunity for greater outreach. That bill that passed many years ago wasn't written all that well, but it doesn't cover all establishments. It's some sloppy language there, but that's just some common sense that would apply to everyone in our industry and would protect consumers as well. And then lastly, I want to point out that we have new legislation that's not targeting our industry, but certainly involves our industry. For example, AB 1003 about wage theft. I think more licensees need to know about this because while the board does not enforce that, it certainly is part of their purview as far as health and safety and workers' rights. And we need to be aware, and establishments need to be aware as they engage others to work there, that they have to compensate staff legally. Thank you.
And there appears to be no additional requests for public comment. I wasn't quite certain. Did we lose our speaker? Did we lose Jamie?
I don't think so. I think we heard her
Okay.
comment.
Okay.
She said I was finished.
Okay. Thank you so much. So that appears to be the end of our request for comment.
So the next item on the agenda is, I believe we're at item number
6.
6.
Oh, I'm sorry, 5. No, public comment on items not on the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. So we can open it up to public comment for any items not on the agenda.
All right, we are open for public comments for items not on the agenda. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests for comments. We're going to take just a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, please. Okay, we can move on to number 6, which is agenda items for the next meeting. Other than what we talked about already, we will include those as well. So if you had anything in addition to what we've already talked about, we would take those now.
And I do have a question too, Chrissy. On the as far as the committee members, do we meet as often as the board meets, or how does the meetings for the committee go? I think that's something I need to know.
That's something we can discuss now, and it's at the pleasure of the committee. I would recommend this committee meet quarterly. And then what we do is the committee will give a report to the board. So we kind of will stagger them with the board meetings, and then at the following board meeting, the committee chair would give a report on anything that we discussed. But it's the Education and Outreach Committee, so it's a lot of input and discussion at this point of this committee. It's not as it runs a little different than like a legislation committee where we're making a firm recommendation to the board. So I think quarterly for this meeting, for this committee is sufficient.
I agree. And I think we have a board meeting coming up in a month or so. I don't feel like there needs to be another one before the next board meeting, unless there's something urgent. I would like to see the materials we talked about. But I would say however much time is appropriate before the following board meeting might be useful.
Perfect. And we'll reach out to each of you with a suggestion for a committee for the schedule to schedule these out for the rest of the year.
Perfect. Thank you.
And again, with a smaller number of people, we can usually be pretty flexible. So we always will take that we try to do that anyways, but we'll always take into consideration when there's summer vacations happening and things like that. So
are these committee meetings normally in person, or would they continue virtual?
They are normally done in person. Before we had the executive order to allow the teleconferencing, all of our meetings were in person. We didn't do any type of telemeeting. So it'll depend on what happens with proposed legislation on if we can even continue to do web-based meetings, but normally they would be in person.
Okay. Thank you.
So I believe we would need to open it up for public comment one last time for agenda item number 6.
We are now taking public comment for future agenda items. If you would like to make a suggestion for a future agenda item, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We will call on people in the order we have a request for public comment. We're now going to take about 15 seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, please. All right, so I'll turn it over to you, Tanya. Unless anyone has any more input, we can ask our chair to adjourn the meeting.
I take it I say meeting is now adjourned.
Yeah, you do. If you were here, we'd give you a little hammer to.
Thank you so much, Chrissy. Appreciate you coordinating this and putting this all together. Everyone, thank you for your participation. And this meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you all.